If you believe what you like in the gospel and reject what you don't like, it is not the gospel you believe, but yourself. St. Augustine. What is going on, everybody? My name is Logan, and welcome back to the Conservation Project, the podcast for the average Joe that still believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we are still one nation under God. I'm back. It has been a minute. Life gets in the way sometimes, man. Sometimes there's not much more you can say about it than that. I've been going 90-0, and I mean things have been absolutely nonstop. However, it's Thursday, which means it's time for another episode. However, I know I missed Tuesday, but I'm excited to announce that tomorrow, Freedom Fridays is coming back, and I'm really excited for you to hear this one. I haven't done this in a while, so there's been a lot of good news that's been cycling, been coming out, and a lot of uplifting stuff that we're going to be able to talk about. And some uplifting stuff that we're going to talk about today. Now, before I get into this, kind of have an update, kind of have a big announcement. The first episode or guest episode of the Conservation Project is actually coming Monday the 17th. Now, there's a reason for that. It's going to be two things, and I'm not going to get super into this, but on the 17th of each month, I'm going to try to have a guest, and it's going to be a guest special on the 17th. 17th is an ode to 1776, and it's kind of a preliminary thing that we're thinking about right now here at TCP, and we're kind of working through it. But I want it to be something that stands out, a monthly special, honoring America, all about talking about things with the guest. It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. And not to get too far into it, but it is going to be somebody that's going to be actively involved in the Conservation Project. So we got some big stuff moving. I'm really looking forward to it. And let's just hop into what's going on today. So there has been a ridiculous amount of stuff that has been going on. So let's start with what happened today. The OSHA vaccine mandate struck down. It's gone. It is gone. The Supreme Court has officially decided by a huge majority of 6-3 to stay the Biden administration's unconstitutional private employer vaccine mandate. I mean, this is a huge thing. And if you haven't read on what's happening, I highly suggest that you go read the Daily Wire's article about this. And the reason why I specifically say the Daily Wire is because by all accounts, they were actually the first of these affected companies to file this lawsuit and go through this entire fight. They were the ones that kind of took up the charge initially. And that is some of the stuff that they have pumped into this. They have had over 1 million signatures in regards to this. They actually put out it's what was that old website where you could sign your name to it and, try to get something changed, yada, yada, whatever. Bottom line is they put out this poll of people and told people to sign this petition to get this overruled. And the bottom line is there has been massive and overwhelming support for our side of the aisle's way of handling this. And I don't know about you, but that is freaking awesome. I'm so proud of all of these Americans that have decided to take up that march. And that is so, oh God, that's so awesome. More importantly, the court stay prevails even if the Sixth Circuit rules in favor of the Biden administration at some future date. And as the Daily Wire says, this spells all but certain doom for OSHA's unimaginable overreach into the private health decisions of some 85 million Americans whose only crime is having a job at a company with more than 100 employees. It's insane. Let me read off this order of the court. So according to the order of the court, says this, quote, although COVID-19 is a risk that occurs in many workplaces, it is not an occupational hazard in most. COVID-19 can and does spread at home, in schools, during sporting events, and everywhere else that people gather. That kind of universal risk is no different from the day-to-day dangers that all face from crime, air pollution, or any number of communicable diseases. Permitting OSHA to regulate the hazards of daily life simply because most Americans have jobs and face those same risks on the clock would significantly expand OSHA's regulatory authority without clear congressional authorization. Now, the order further states, although Congress has indisputably given OSHA the power to regulate occupational dangers, it has not given that agency the power to regulate public health more broadly, requiring the vaccination of 84 million Americans selected simply because they work for employers with more than 100 employees certainly falls in the latter category. We won. Hey, you take what you can get. And we're going to talk about this more today because this stuff is crazy. Some of the stuff that has been happening today, this is why I like recording these in the evening, because you never know what's going to happen. I was listening to the radio today, kind of the mid-afternoon shift, and man, I tell you what, the stuff that was going on, breaking news after breaking news after breaking news. This is exactly what Americans are hoping for. This is what Americans are fighting for. Real Americans are fighting for this kind of stuff, and God bless them for it. This is exactly, I gotta say this. I have to say this. Over the last several weeks, and really since I started this, the biggest thing that I've talked about is Americans being Americans and standing for American values. And a lot of our traditional American values were Christian values, Christian conservative values. That's how we started this joker in a lot of senses. Now, I'm not saying that's a broad thing across all spectrums of this, but at the bottom line, people need to be people, and these people need to be free with certain inalienable rights, God-given inalienable rights. End of discussion. That's it. And when things like this happen, after all of this blatant tyranny and overreach that we have been dealing with for this past year, it's good to win one. And we're going to keep winning more, but we have to keep up the fight. I was talking to somebody today who said that one of their friends on our side of the aisle feels so defeated by everything going on with this administration, with how people are folding over, that they said, maybe it's time for me to just give up. Politically speaking, that is. They said, maybe it's just time that maybe it just doesn't matter. All these elections are going to be bogus from here on out. We cannot, listen to me, if you take nothing else from anything that I say ever on this podcast, please hear me on this one thing. Never stop fighting, ever. Don't give up, because this is proof that we can win, and we can win huge. And then when you do stuff like we're going to talk about later with the Democratic Party and Biden's administration erupting, I mean, we have the wind at our backs. The sail's full. It's time to go for it, because it's clear that we can win this stuff. So this is why I tell you, go comment on things like those ATF forms we were talking about. Go comment on that kind of stuff. Write your representatives. All of this stuff, it matters. Never think that one vote doesn't matter. Because if you have 1 million people who think their vote doesn't matter, and they all think that, look at the margin of error of the last several elections. You can't tell me that 50,000, 100,000 votes don't matter, because they absolutely do. In every case of all the most recent elections that we've seen, it has come down to the minutia. So it absolutely matters. Never give up. We can win this. We can bring this stuff back to our side. And it's clear that these wheels, these cogs in these machines are starting to turn again. And it's not happening by accident. We're making this happen. This right here, OSHA getting slapped, this is proof that this can happen. And it's going to happen, so keep the faith. It doesn't help that our Our houseplant in chief is doing what he does best, and it's it's nothing. It's nothing. It's pretty much nothing. To be completely honest with you, it's pretty much nothing. But I will say, when our president of the United States is so hell-bent on tearing himself apart by just, in some cases, just blatant omission, we have to take advantage of that. There's no other way for me to put that. We have to take advantage of that. Here's what I mean by that. So a couple of days ago, Biden was in Atlanta, and he gave a speech about these two bills that he's trying to pass. Now, they're both voting bills, and one's called the Freedom to Vote Act, and the other is called the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. The bottom line is, if you haven't heard about this, which if you haven't, where you been? Because that's all I've been hearing about lately. It's essentially federalizing voting. If you want to tear down a republic, that's a good starting point. It's horrible. Here's the thing. Our president cannot let go of the race card. The whole thing, you're not supposed to see color and all of that and all this kind of stuff and whatever. You take whatever from that you would like. At the end of the day, we're just people. We're just humans. We need to treat each other as such. Our president and his administration cannot see anything but black and white. And I mean that from a skin color sense. Because this speech in Atlanta was purely, without question, designed to appeal to the black voter. Now, if you want to try to win the votes of a specific demographic, okay, that is politics. And frankly, that is not... that's not terrible politics. I don't really have a lot of problem with that because there are some demographics, there are some minorities that attach themselves to specific issues. That's human. That is humans in a nutshell. We cling to the things that we care about the most. Politics are no different. They're no different whatsoever. However, what is different is when our current president goes out of his way to make everything about black versus white, because it is, at this point, it is black versus white. And the president and Kamala Harris, the vice president, have been making this trip, and from what I've read, is about a 650-mile journey for joint appearances and all this kind of stuff. And he gave this speech, particularly about what we were just talking about, these two votes, or these two acts, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And it's the federal legislation to shield voting rights, particularly for those of color. And he says, this administration says that their enfranchisement appears to be under attack. Okay. You know what? This is very political, and this is a very political move. So, I think a lot of politics can be very despicable at times, especially when you do things like what we're about to talk about. But to have your entire, and I do mean your entire running, the whole point of why you're running is to unify America, and then you go out of your way with every breath that you take to not do that. It's one of two things. He really is that dumb. And I don't just want to overtly bash the man. I don't think he's an idiot. I think he's becoming senile, and I think his health is degrading. I genuinely do think his health is degrading. I'm not sure if we can chalk it up to full senility at this point, but it's getting close. But his whole thing was unifying the nation and beating COVID. Well, there's been more deaths in a fraction of the time due to COVID because he has no power to shut this down. And then he does things like this. And what we're about to see is a clip from this speech. Now, I want you to tell me if this is unifying America.
How do you want to be remembered? At consequential moments in history, they present a choice. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis?
Does that sound unifying to you? Because I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't sound unifying to me. It really, really does not. As a matter of fact, it sounds like one of the most destructive arguments I think I've ever heard come out of a president's mouth. And Donald Trump said some wacky crap. He said some aggressive stuff, but my God, what I would not give for a mean tweet right now. Yeah, I said it. I'm hanging on that cliche. I don't really care. Because you know what? At this point, it's kind of true. Because our current president is sitting at a 33% approval rating, being backed by somebody like Nancy Pelosi, the lapdog. We're about to see some more from her. So his first year as president, border crisis, supply chain crisis, inflation at a 40-year high, rising gas prices, more COVID deaths than Trump, abandoned Americans in Afghanistan, and his vaccine mandate was struck down. So you tell me what you think about this, because from my perspective, yeah, it's not great. And then what do we have? What do we have as his backup? What do we have as his second in command? Good old Kamala Harris. Here's a quote from Kamala Harris today in her wildly popular interview. "It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day." I have read that probably a dozen times today, and I keel over laughing every single freaking time. So you tell me if this is unification. Seriously. I don't see any way that this administration can say that they have unified this country in any shape, any form, any way at all. And furthermore, fighting to change, I'm not, change is the wrong word. Fighting to destroy the foundations in which we built this country on is not going to see it through to a better place. It will not. That is the bottom line. So when you argue that you can be on the side of Jim Crow or Abraham Lincoln or Bull Connor or all this kind of stuff, it's a nonsense argument. And then he backs it up by saying that he supports any change necessary to make it happen, to destroy the filibuster, to change the rules. This is the high school equivalent of, I didn't like the rules, so I cried about it, and Daddy paid the high school to change the rules to fit him. I mean, seriously, this is nonsense. This is high school nonsense coming out of our executive branch. And the craziest part about this is it's completely unapologetic. I mean, it is blatantly unapologetic. Now, to make that even more fun, today the press kind of stopped Joe Biden in his tracks, and they asked him about this speech, and he said, "Yeah, probably wasn't the best thing I could have said." Now I'm paraphrasing and being very casual about it, but seriously, this is a man with a 33% approval rating that came into the office with a vaccine in a time where if he just would have gotten off his ego, this pandemic could have been over. It is over. We discussed this. You're a grown adult. You've made your decision. You either got it or you didn't. Congratulations, the pandemic is over. Had he went along with that narrative, the truth, We wouldn't be in more lockdowns. We wouldn't be having constant panic attacks over the common cold. Omicron. We wouldn't be going through all of this stuff, and it's this accountability thing again. We have to hold these people accountable because a man right now that inherited the office with the wind in his sails, the wind at his back, he could be leading one of the biggest economic booms in our nation's history. Instead, he has a 33% approval rating because people don't trust him. Nearly 70% of Americans think he's a horrible president. And you know what really doesn't help your argument? Nancy Pelosi. Because Nancy Pelosi recently, today actually, went out and she said this about his speech.
And do you think that the president may have gone a little bit too far in trying to sell this particular bill to the American people and trying to get votes to try and get this passed by breaking the filibuster?
No, I stand with the president. I think that I thought his speech was wonderful.
Now, the audio was horrible on that, and I do apologize. That was the best recording of it I could find. But man, you had the wind at your back. And frankly, you could have just went with it. But when you're at the point where Pelosi lowers her eyebrows and comes out to the stage and says, "Hey, you did a great job there, Chief," you are sticking with your core 25% voters. That core group of people that will support you no matter what you say. Trump was known for this. What am I kidding? Every president is known for this. I remember hearing this one time. Trump would come out and he would do one of two things. He'd come out with a bat, he'd swing, crack, hit a home run. Sometimes he would swing, crack, hit a baby. As it turns out, even when he hit babies, he still had more support than our current president does. And you know, it's that core 25%. They are not the louder minority. I absolutely promise you that. These 33% that still support him, it's that core 25 with the leftovers. And that is not uncommon to have that core with the outlying, the outliers. But seeing this trend slowly downwards, and then looking at the response to people like Kamala Harris, and then you have Pelosi come out and say, well, yeah, he did a great job, and then kind of just stammers for another 2 minutes. If you haven't seen the clip, please go watch the clip. It's the rest of what I just showed you. It is difficult to watch. It is very indicative. Because the bottom line, folks, this administration is not well received, and they're making a lot of dumb mistakes. And at this point, I'm wondering if I can even call them mistakes. The reason being, and the reason I say that, is because of what we talked about earlier. They had the recipe for absolute success. There was the Afghanistan thing alone was the first nail. And if this administration doesn't watch it, the last nail is going to be the vote here in the fall. I mean, it really is. If it's going to continue to trend the way that it is with an overwhelming red wave coming through, it will effectively be the nail in the coffin for this administration. And just claiming that something is bipartisan does not mean that it's bipartisan. And frankly, this administration can't even get itself in line. It cannot get Democrats in line, and it sure as all get out is not getting Republicans in line by an overwhelming majority. Now, there's Republicans that do stuff like we talked about a couple episodes ago where, they vote for the Build Back Better and all this kind of stuff. But what about Manchin and Sinema? Specifically Sinema. Sinema has been, she's the Democrat from Arizona. Senator Kyrsten Sinema, she formally announced her position against changing the Senate rules on the filibuster. She said that there was, quote, virtually no path for the Democratic Party's attempt to execute a federal overhaul of election laws. So CNN, Manu Raju, I don't watch CNN. I don't watch whoever this is, so I'm known for butchering names. That's not changing today. So this guy said it's not going very well for the White House. In fact, they're bound to fail. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem good to me. So let's take a listen.
It's not going very well for the White House. In fact, they are bound to fail. There's virtually no path for this happening. Kyrsten Sinema.
So, the bottom line is not even the people that would typically agree think that this is going to happen. Now, he goes on for quite a while, so I'm going to break this down. But he goes on to say this. Kyrsten Sinema shut the door to any changes to the Senate filibuster rules even before Joe Biden came here. And remember just the process of how this would play out. In order to pass a bill through the regular order to overcome a filibuster in the Senate, that requires 60 votes. That means 50 Democrats and 10 Republicans. Republicans are steadfast against these two bills that Democrats are trying to approve, the Freedom to Vote Act and also the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They oppose that. Now, the other way is to change the rules. In order to change the rules to allow the bill to pass by just 51 votes, 50 votes with Kamala Harris breaking the tie, they need all Democrats on board in a 50-50 Senate. Sinema said she will not support lowering the 60-vote threshold. She worries that could have drastic ramifications for the country in the long term. When in God's name did we start just magically agreeing with some Democrats? Or when did Democrats start agreeing with us? I don't know where this is going. Joe Manchin has been in favor of this as well. This Raju goes on to say this. Joe Manchin has not been in favor of that. He also opposes changing the rules along party lines, meaning that there's no path for Joe Biden to move this despite him investing political capital, despite him going to Georgia earlier this week, and despite him coming up here to this Senate Democratic lunch in which he told Democrats that if there are no voting rights bills, that there are no rights at all. This is a frightening thing. I mean, he is going on to say in CNN, how about this? How about you just hear it from the horse's mouth? How about that? Take a listen here, because even Biden himself is now admitting that he doesn't think it can happen.
We all ask questions about complicated subjects like, can you get this done? I hope we can get this done. The honest to God answer is, I don't know whether we can get this done.
Straight from the horse's mouth. Seriously. This is where we're at now. No, I'm not saying that's a bad thing on our end. I'm really not. But look at the way this is trending. So we had a huge win today. And then a couple days ago, the president just blatantly shot himself and his entire party in the foot by basically calling anybody that's against him a bunch of friggin' racists. There's no real two ways about this. This is the truth. Now, let's take that a step forward. What's happening in the public eye in regards to the press? Well, let's discuss that. So, this happened today. And this is coming from the Daily Wire. So, Psaki went out today. Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, she is attempting in whatever way possible to matrix the bejesus out of this. And I mean, seriously, she is trying to dodge a bullet like nobody I've ever seen. And at this point, she's not even making sense. But I'm going to read off what a reporter asked her today. Or a comment and kind of a question. It's a little bit long, so bear with me. We're going to listen to her response afterwards, but this is what he said. Frankly, things just seem like they're going pretty poorly right now. Build Back Better is being blocked. Voting rights is being blocked. Diplomatic talks with Russia doesn't seem to have brought us back from the brink of war. Inflation is at a 40-year high. The virus is setting records for infections. So as we kind of hit this one-year period, and a period where everything seems like it's in pretty rough shape for nearly everything, which is not an invitation, I guess, to list off some other things. But I'm wondering, at what point do you take stock and say things that we need to change internally, whether it's your outreach for the Hill, whether it's the leadership within the White House? You seem to be stymied on an incredible number of fronts right now. And boy, she's just taking it out of talking to the press 101. Just flip. Just spin it around. Spin team. Spin cycle. I mean, this is like a friggin' episode of Parks and Rec. It honest to God is. She literally just took all of this and turned it around for what can be found in the positive by clawing and throwing whatever at the wall that will stick. And then as she rambles and rambles and rambles for 2 minutes, here's what she says.
So the sense is things are going well. There's no need for change right now.
I think that having worked in a White House before, you do hard things in White Houses. You have every challenge at your feet, laid at your feet, whether it's global or domestically. And we could certainly propose legislation to see if people support bunny rabbits and ice cream, but that wouldn't be very rewarding to the American people. So the president's view is we're going to keep pushing for hard things, and we're going to keep pushing the boulders up the hill to get it done.
Too quick.
Boy, I'm sorry, but I got to tell you, if we're officially at the point where she has gotten to her wit's end and she is not only just blatantly deflecting and attempting to spin, which in fairness has been the majority of her job, she has been put, I feel for her more than I do for anybody else in the Biden administration. Because she's the one that has to stand at this podium and attempt to find some good in this goat screw. And I'm just going to be blunt here. This absolute dumpster fire of a situation that she finds herself in, and a dumpster fire of an administration she finds herself in. And she has to take this and spin it and go, nope, it's all good. For real. That is what she says. She is trying to find, seriously, when I say the words, she's trying to throw whatever at the wall that she thinks will stick, this is what I mean.
Fronts right now.
Well, let me give you a little bit of a different take on this. More than 200 million people are vaccinated. We've had a record job growth, record low unemployment rates historically in this country over the last year. We've rebuilt our alliances and our relationships around the world. And right now, as it relates to Russia, as you heard our national security advisor convey, we're working with partners around the world to convey very clearly. It's up to them to make a choice about what's next.
Okay, I got to stop it right there. Because this is exactly what I mean. She is in the worst position of anybody else. But her biggest problem is that she actually believes the garbage she's spewing. Because if you actually question literally anything that she just said as a positive, you find a whole lot more red in that than you do green. I'm just being honest. You find a whole lot of issues in the stuff that she's attempting to spin as positive. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. We've got a lot going on here in our administration. And it's kind of a double-edged sword because at the end of the day, this is still our country. This is still our nation. And I still want to see it prosper. And I'm not going to actively wish and hope on the downfall of others to get there. Now, am I going to say that sacrifices don't have to be made? Absolutely not. I stand for that every day of my life. I will always say that. You know, I grew up hearing my dad say, sacrificing is giving up something you love for something that you love more. And I think what we're seeing right now is the sacrifice of the views of the executive branch. I genuinely believe that. I think we are watching, to a degree, the disassembly of the executive branch and the faith in the executive branch, because a lot of people right now believe that this one thing, the office of the president, is kind of that savior at that light at the end of the tunnel. But we're kind of seeing the dismantling of this between the reaction from the left about Trump and the reaction from the right about Biden. This is a very polarizing time. And we are seeing this dismantling. And I think to a degree that, yes, things are starting to kind of break down a little bit for this administration, and we're seeing our stuff rise up. And I like the OSHA thing today, like the OSHA mandate today. Little things like this, he's discrediting himself. He's even more than he already has. He's discrediting his administration and the press secretary that has to get up here and answer for it. But we're seeing our side of the aisle start to build back up. We're starting to gain a voice again. We're starting to get that action out there. We're starting to see really positive things happen here. So yeah, I think that the office of the president should and could be an amazing title. It should be an honor. It should be an honor for us as citizens to look at that and go, I may not have voted for him, but he's done some good things, and I'd still stand for him if it came down to it. And for the last two elections, the left didn't believe that about Trump, but the right doesn't believe that about Biden. And that's just the truth. So I think it is a bit of sacrificing. I think it's a bit of sacrificing the view of the executive branch right now for the good of the country. And I think that's a rebuilding step. I really do. And I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. But I do think there is some validity to getting back to our roots. I really do. I genuinely believe that. So I'm going to talk about getting back to our roots real heavily for a second. Luke 9:23-24. And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. You want to talk about getting back to your roots and getting back to the things that matter, taking and making those sacrifices that matter and will pay dividends in the long run? Luke 9:23-24. That's it. Whoever would save his life will lose it. Take up his cross daily. It's not just one thing. Take up his cross daily and follow me. There's your groundwork. We can rebuild, and we will continue to build off of that right there. We just got to keep our hearts and minds right. That is Toxic Positivity 101, and I love it. But that's all I got. My name is Logan. This has been The Conservation Project, the podcast for the average Joe that still believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we are still one nation under God. Thank you, guys.